after about 2027, the United States of America collapses, along with any of a number of other countries. And that then splits North America into, within the next 5 years to about 2032, is 5 new countries in North America. Well, we're at a place of decision. We got 2 years at the most, I would argue, that if we don't take the off ramp, if we don't go and start to build the basis for a new world, literally, how it works, how the pieces are, what is it based on, what are the values, and this other kinds of stuff, that they're going to get us and they're going to lock us down and we won't be able to go. And so we have this extraordinary opportunity. This is an amazing time that we can literally head off and we can start to creatively think.
My guest today is John Petersen, who is considered to be one of the world's most foremost futurists. He has worked with the White House on special projects. He has been somebody that people go to for information. He is a wealth of knowledge. And the first time I ever saw an interview with him, I was absolutely blown away. And then lucky enough to get to spend some actual real time with him in Egypt. So we're going to dive deep and talk about some things that you really need to understand about what's coming in our future. So John, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
How are you? It's nice to see you. Always.
So good. It's so good to see you. I feel so lucky, John, because I saw your interview not once. I watched it twice before I met you in person. And I came up to you the first time I saw you on the trip and I was like, John Petersen, I am so excited to talk to you. And we got to spend hours and hours together having these deep conversations. And I feel like I get to call you friend now. And I feel super connected to you. And I love the genuineness that you are and what you're trying to do for humanity to help people understand what's coming. So for people who have never heard of a futurist, have no idea what we're going to talk about, why do you think people should tune in and listen to this conversation today?
Well, a futurist is somebody who spends their time kind of professionally, in my case, trying to think about the future. How does it evolve? How do you think about it? Kind of what structured ways in which you can kind of anticipate pieces of it. How do you prepare? And so on. And there's maybe a couple hundred professional futurists that kind of full-time are in the business. And our little shop, I started the Arlington Institute back in 1989. And our little shop is probably the only one that kind of works full spectrum. We think about kind of the conventional world. I can talk to you about, oil and transportation and economics and all of those kinds of things. But we also look at the unconventional kind of space, which is the larger, otherwise invisible kind of other dimensional kind of space, because it's an integral part. It's in all a big system and it all works together. And if you only look at it from a kind of a tangible point of view, you're working with a half a deck of cards. I mean, because other things are all going on. And so that's what we do. We used to characterize ourselves primarily as generating original thinking, because it's real easy to do kind of analysis and stuff, but we're always a pretty creative shop. And what we've been doing for the last 15 years is our kind of motto is we facilitate the transition to the new world, because what we have seen and become very clear to me quite some time ago, the inklings, the early indications is that we are in the middle of the epical kind of transition to a new world, the type of change, the magnitude of change of which you've never seen on this planet before. And it's all happening in a very short period of time. It has extraordinary implications, and it calls all of us who have shown up here at this period of time, who have a a job to do, a role to play in terms of this emergent new world, to stand up and do what we got to do. And that's why it's important to think about this stuff, because it's just moving ahead like a freight train on the track, and it's accelerating. And we'll talk about it here a little bit. We don't have a whole lot of time, and we got to start going in a new direction. And it's kind of like a hurricane that's inbound, and I'm the weather forecaster, and the job is to say, hey, it might come here, it might come here, but in any case, it alerts people and makes them knowledgeable so that they can prepare, and they can make their own decisions. It's not an attempt to try to generate fear, but on the other hand, if you're a good weather forecaster, you're not sitting there thinking all the time, well, I better not talk about the hurricane because somebody might be fearful about it. No, this is the chance to make people, it's Paul Revere like, if you will, that says, here come the British. And so this is what we're talking about.
Okay, I am glad that you mentioned the part about fear, because this channel's not about that, of course. Most people who have tuned in and are following the channel are doing so because I talk to people who've had near-death experiences, spiritually transformative experiences, and I've been talking about the Great Awakening, which is the universal collective consciousness waking up. And even though we're not in the same space, in a way we are, because AI is now involved and people are really waking up to some truths. I think the government is having things uncovered that were previously hidden from us. We are uncovering truths that we didn't know about before. And I think it all filters into the same thing of, we're going to place in the future. It's going to affect every single one of us. And I don't want people to be fearful, just like you said, but we need to be aware that things are coming. And I think what struck me the most, the very first time I heard you talk about this, I'd never, ever previously heard anybody talk about the future in the way that you did, but I'm all about proving things. My background's pharmaceutical sales. I had to watch or listen to, read clinical trials to understand the p-value, statistical significance, like what's really real. What's, get rid of the things that aren't fact and really understand it. That's that left brain part of me that really needs to prove things. This is why when I go to a medium, I want evidential information. I want somebody who gives me something concrete that I can go and check, or can tell me something I couldn't possibly know. And you gave that to me in probably the first 15 minutes of the interview I listened to, because you talked about a man who had built an AI about 40 years ago and was using it and predicting things with not 50% accuracy, not 85% accuracy, but with 100% accuracy. And you got my attention, and I started to listen more deeply. So I would love for you to explain that part.
Yeah, well, it's an interesting story, because if you're in my kind of business, trying to kind of suss the vibes, trying to figure out what might be inbound, it's one thing if it's just kind of a linear extrapolation and a variation of the past, and you can dredge up kind of experiences and patterns and processes and tools from the past and tune them up in order to give you some kind of an idea where the next incremental change is going to come. It's dramatically different if it's exponential. And if you are moving into a space that, you can make the case that it is fundamentally different than where we've lived before. And it's an epical change. It's from one era to another one. And it is, it's huge. And so if there aren't many people that think like this, admittedly, but when I got into this business and looked at that, I said, God, none of the stuff that, the projections and the kind of things that most people do is going to work into this space, because this is going somewhere where nobody's ever been before. It's like, you need to figure out what's inside of a black build a building that's all blacked out and has all locked doors, and you have no idea, and nobody you know has ever been there before, and you've got to figure out what's inside or get some kind of an idea, because that's where you're all going to live. And so what I started to do is I'm an electrical engineer by education, so I share some of this Cartesian linear deterministic kind of outlook that you kind of allude to. And so I started looking around to try to say, what other than kind of hand waving, and like you say, you can go to psychics and mediums and they'll tell you all kinds of things, and you can say, prove it, and it's hard to, I'm not discounting that at all, but I'm just saying it's in a different kind of bucket than it is when you're trying to really figure out what are you going to do with all of humanity or this country or whatever going forward, and that it has the potential. Well, I mean, every indication of being just fundamentally different. Just different humans. We call them with the new human and a new world, literally, physiologically, biologically, spiritually, all kinds of things, a whole new human. So you don't have a whole lot of those to study. You don't around. You don't have a way in which to look into this space. And so I started looking for individuals who had a track record and a tool, if you will, or a process that was understandable, that you can make sense out of and say, yeah. So there's kind of a logic stream that takes you to the end point that they're talking about. And I found a guy named Martin Armstrong down in Florida. Marty is rather famous in financial circles. At one time, he owned and started the largest financial advisory service in the country. Princeton Economics, I think, is what it was called back then. And he had billions and that was, a long time ago, 30 years probably. And he had billions and billions of dollars under kind of managed under advisory functions. And he was an advisor to all of the central banks and the major central banks in the world and many different countries and leaderships. I mean, he was extraordinary. And the reason why was because he had figured out early on that every aspect in life, every component of life, of this reality that we know, is described fundamentally by some kind of an oscillation. It vibrates, it goes back and forth. Some of it has large cycles, large periods, over dozens, hundreds of years, maybe thousands of years. Certainly, some things we could talk about 12,000 years, they come and go and have big changes on the planet, and a lot of things are smaller. And what Marty did was he figured out how, because he was really interested in trading. When he was a kid in high school in New York, he had worked in a rare coins, a coin shop, and he got interested in the history that was associated with all these coins, and why did they do new coins now and not then, and so on. And he mapped them around kind of what was happening on the earth at that time. And what he found out is that there was these regular kind of boom and bust, war and peace, other kinds of cycles, and that they were predictable. They had a regular kind of orientation, and that then morphed into his father said, get a real job, and so he had to go to college and get a degree in computer programming, and then he got out and went to Wall Street and started to do some hedge fund work. But in any case, he morphed the two things together and built himself a capability. He calls it Copernicus. I'll have to remember. I keep forgetting these great guys' names. Anyway, he built this capability that now has 75 different components. So it looks at climate, it looks at the weather, it looks at geopolitics, it looks at energy, it looks at, it looks at the Dow Jones average and everything. So now he became famous and very wealthy because the system was never wrong. And he could tell you to the day when the top of the market. I mean, I go to his conferences every year, and in October, I think it was in 2019, I was at his conference, and he stood up and he said, Socrates, that's the name of his program. Socrates says Socrates says that something big is going to happen next year in January on the 22nd, 21st and 22nd, and it's going to change the whole world. It's going to go in a new direction. He says that it doesn't say what it is going to be, but it says it's going to be here. And he said, maybe you get somebody new into the presidential race or something. Hillary comes in. He says, I don't know what it is. And so I went and I did a talk in December and said, something's coming in January. I don't know what it is. Here it comes. And you get to January the 20th and the 21st, and you start looking around and you say, nothing's happening. What is this? And then boom, it just blows up in your face and you say, COVID. And he had it to the day when the thing kind of broke into the news and it became a thing. So that's what this computer can do. And this computer system, and Marty is very careful to say, I don't interpret this stuff. And it's not coming from me. I'm just telling you what the machine says. And he said, and I've tried, it's said things in the past that stuff was going to happen that just really didn't make any sense. And I've really tried to prove it wrong. And I've always been wrong. And he says, I just tell you what it says. Okay. So Marty Armstrong's computer is Socrates. Is that what I said it was? I can't even remember.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Socrates. That's what Socrates says, is that and it said this for 40 years, right? It said that, and he's been talking about this at every conference that I've gone to since it, that we're going to be in the middle of this year in World War III, and it is going
to. You're talking about which year? Say the year, because these videos live in perpetuity.
Well, that's a
2025.
Perpetuity. Okay. 2025. Yeah, that between 2025 and 2027, what you are going to get is essentially what we'll look back and say it was a global civil war, that you're going to have people all over the planet rising up against their governments. And by the way, it's going to pivot. It's going to hinge on the idea of betrayal, that you've screwed us. We gave you our money, we gave you our trust and everything, and you've gone out. And now, does that sound slightly familiar, maybe in the present terms, in terms of what they're digging up and finding out?
Now we're in April of 2025 as we are recording this, and I think that things may have, somebody unlocked the door to the vault.
Yeah. Doge is working their way through the trash and finding all kinds of amazing kind of things, and they're just started. And so what he says is, by the way, from his point of view, that after about 2027, the United States of America collapses, along with any of a number of other countries. And that then splits in North America into, within the next 5 years to about 2032, is 5 different countries, new countries in North America. Well, that's a really interesting idea. I mean, it's interesting for lots of reasons, not least of which is how in the world in 5 years do you decompose and recompose what was the largest, most complex kind of country on the planet. But more than that, and what's really fascinating in terms of the kind of things that you and our listeners are interested in, it gives you a chance to build something new that you've just never had before. I mean, you could literally build a new country here. Somebody's going to do it. And so there's a real opportunity to go into some new space. Now, that's conventional kind of analysis, and it's spot on. I mean, if you watch it and you have that image in your mind and you look across at the hundreds of thousands of people that are in the streets in major capitals all over the world demonstrating against their governments, then yeah, sure, you can see that scenario as a distinct possibility. Now, there's another person that's important in this kind of match, and his name is Cliff High. You know, it's Cliff, C-L-I-F, High, H-I-G-H. And Cliff is a big brain guy from state who is a computer programmer. And he was a guy early on that Microsoft used to contract to go out and solve the big problems, the big network problems that nobody else could solve. And he looked at the behavior of the network and how things, you know, happen sequentially and the kind of stuff. And he came to the conclusion that there was a, if you will, that big events, big perturbations that were coming in they had a bow wave. You know what that is on a boat that puts out in front of the boat? If you see a big ship that's going, there'll be a wave that's out in front of the boat. And it comes before the boat, before the ship arrives. And a bow wave that would sweep across this planet. If you had a big thing like Diana dies or, you know, a big kind of disruption, 9/11, those kinds of things, is that what it almost bleeds through from maybe a different timeline, or I don't know. You can use all kinds of imagery, but that it works its way into the populace, if you will. And Cliff came to the conclusion. He started with the kind of the theory that all humans are psychic, basically, and that you know, some more so than others are more, you know, and are able to use it better than others. But when this information comes in of this big change that's coming downstream, then what it does is it affects everyone in very subtle ways. And the way it does is that you start to use vocabulary in a different way, that you start to use terms and you use phrases and things. It's not explicit about the thing that's coming, but it's kind of descriptive, if you will, about what's inbound. And so you might use, so let me give you an example. And by the way, he built this amazing kind of program that uses billions of web bots that go all over the web and scours the web in 6 different languages and does you know, a time slice that says what are the terms and the phrases and the other things that people are talking about across the planet. And then he's built an ontology or a cosmology. I don't know which one you'd want to use here, but that breaks up the big chunks of the mainline media and the powers that be and other kind of things. And then he extracts out of this information. So this is very sophisticated. He's a very bright guy, and it has a lot of linguistic kind of aspects to the thing. He extracts the new ideas and the new thoughts and the new words and the new phrases that are coming up, maps them to the different areas, whether it's the press or the mainline media or the stuff, the weirdo stuff coming out of the kind of the sky, if you will. And then he can track them from time to time to time, so we can see how the new ideas coming up, where it's migrating to another area, where it's growing and getting bigger and so on. And then in his case, he has to do interpretation of these kinds of things. And I don't want to waste all of our time going into the details of how this happened, but I'll give you one story, and that is that 3 years before COVID, he started getting the imagery that said that Corona, that there's going to be some big disease that's going to come downstream, and it's going to be, and the key word was Corona. And by the way, you know, in my business, I look for all these kind of weird, wonderful, weird people who do things. And I have a friend who dreams about the future in England, and he too started having these dreams about Corona. And in his particular case, he thought it was a bottle of beer. It had something to do with Corona, Mexican beer. And in Cliff High's case, he had a lot more stuff to work with. And so he said, I see there's images, there's people that they got stuff on their head and over their faces and things. And what this almost certainly is a sun disease. And so they're kind of trying to cover themselves because Corona, right? Sun. And it wasn't until COVID showed up, the coronavirus, that suddenly, oh, I had that 3 years ago, and you could see it coming. And it came because they started to show up in the language. And like, okay, so Cliff High has refined that process dramatically, and so that he can get time because of the kind of energy associated with the adjectives and the adverbs and so on. He can figure out whether it's a long ways or close and so on. So he can get timing pretty accurately. So back in July, for instance, remember when Trump got shot, right? It was a Saturday. Well, starting out a month beforehand, Cliff started saying there's something really big and it's going to happen on Monday. By the way, there were a whole bunch of other people, psychics and other stuff, who all suggested that that Monday was going to be a big day. They all characterized it as big things like waves, as tidal waves, or missiles being shot off of ships in the Gulf of Mexico by the Chinese to try to bomb us. And they're all kind of imagery, and they all were focused on Monday. And Cliff said that what my web bots are telling me is that something really big is going to happen. I don't know what it is. So when Trump got shot on Saturday, then what it did, it was off in time. And so he had to go back and figure out and redo the numbers and the stuff. And he found out that he had made a mistake, and it was off by a half an hour in terms of when the thing literally happened. And so what you've got is between the two of these two tools is you've got a very interesting, far better than anything else that exists that I'm aware of, set of capabilities that allow you to, with a degree of granularity that we've never had in the past. I mean, certainly based upon technology and processes and statistics and stuff. We have the ability to begin to start to look into the future in a bit. And so what's clear is from both of these sources is that we're into a period of time between now, we're in April, between now and October or so, where there's going to be a doubling of the amount of kind of energetic response on this planet, that things are going, and essentially you can say things are going to start coming apart and changing and morphing and turning into something else, and in terms that are not just right away. It's not just one event or something, it's deep kind of things. Now Cliff High says, and he's seen this in his data for years and years, he says it's all based on secrets revealed, that you're going to start to get more and more things that are going to come out of the system. Now, I've watched that for years and always thought, well, it'll be big, deep government secrets, and they're going to talk about UFOs and alternative energy and some other kind of stuff. And, and there are some kind of indications that when you find out that the Department of Defense is looking at UFOs, yeah, maybe that's what it is. Well, never in my life did I think it was going to be Donald Trump that was going to be the guy that drives the wedge into the middle of all this and starts to expose all the dirty secrets and the fraud and all the stuff that's going on inside the government. But this is what is happening. And as he continues to open that up, you're going to have just stuff come out of that is just going to change for most Americans, at least. It's just going to fundamentally change their minds about how this all works and who's on first and who are the good guys and all that kind of stuff. And so we're into a really big time, a really fundamental change. And that's only one track or one element of what is dramatically shaping this world in the next couple of years.
Oh my goodness. All right. The first thing that really comes to my mind, since this man Cliff High is talking about keywords that are in the vernacular, that are in the cosmos and in the collective. What are the keywords that are being talked about right now that we need to know?
It doesn't work that way. It'd be nice to know if you did, but this is a very, very complex analytical process that he has described with to some degree of kind of a granularity in the past, but it is so complex that, I mean, he literally had to go through and map the emotional kind of content of millions of words, one after another, to say that, love and attraction are two different words that could be, variations of the same thing, but one's got more to it than the other one. And so, so it's very complex. And he doesn't talk a lot at all, really, about what the literal words are that he's saying. Sometimes he talks about the derivation or the net effects. He does that quite a bit. And so it's not anything that you can anticipate. And I mean, this is very big and complex technology. And so if, it doesn't do us any good to know about these things, because you're not going to know what it is. I mean, if somebody starts to talk about green trees or something, how do you know what that means? I don't know.
Well, just like what you described, how he was, they were hearing Corona and COVID.
Well, he was seeing Corona, but he didn't know what it was, and all he could, and he used to. The problem is this: he used to produce these big reports, and he'd do it every 2 weeks or some other kind of thing, and it was just killing him. And so he no longer, and that had all the kind of the words and stuff in it, but he doesn't do that anymore because he doesn't have the kind of the bandwidth to be able to do that.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. So what we have to do really is rely on somebody like you who has been studying this for a long time, and you're not looking at just one source, you're looking at multiple sources. So what do you want people to prepare for right now? Like, what do we need to start thinking about if this is 2025 to 2027 and we're in the almost middle of 2025 right now?
Right. Well, as it turns out, that if you really dive into this, and I've just written an article for New Dawn magazine that's in this issue of New Dawn magazine about this, that folks might be interested in trying to find. But what you've got, let me build a big picture about where this is that we are in the throes in the middle of this extraordinary kind of evolutionary leap, you could call it, or you could call it awakening, or you could call it consciousness. There's all these kind of words and terms, but they're all about an expanded awareness an expanded awareness about who we are and how the larger reality works. Now, there are a great deal of force, all the powers that be, the regular, are all trying to maintain the control mechanisms to keep us from discovering what we all have inside of us that is part of this new human, right? That the new human is described by being new and new capabilities, new stuff, all kinds of things, telepathy, manifestations, and being able to read auras, maybe not even eating. There's all kinds of indications of different things, all of which, by the way, are popping up all over the world. You've got different people that are doing these things, and that's the nature of large scale, highly dynamic, complex systems, and how they do a change state. And that is the stuff that kind of pops up, and then you get accretion, you get a little clustering around some of these kinds of things, and then all of a sudden, really rapidly, they start talking to each other, and then you go from water to ice in a very short period of time, because that's what's happening now. So, but this is not like going from water to ice. This is like you've got a whole lot of water guys who are sitting there saying, no, I don't want this to ever be water. I want to continue. I don't want it to be ice. I want it to continue to control it. And that's what the technological track is going. It's called technocracy. It is a form of kind of global government where the technocrats, they run everything, and they control everything. You want a bumper sticker for that track? It's control, and it's all about the things that we all know about. It's all about Google and Microsoft and Elon Musk and PayPal and AI and you name it, all of the things that dominate kind of our business and kind of a lot of the political kind of things that we talk about. And what is happening in that space is that there is, and now it's fueled by AI and it's going kind of exponentially, is what's happening is that the capabilities are getting rapidly increasingly invasive, and such that literally, and I talk about this in this article, that just almost every aspect of your life that they can access in ways that most people don't even begin to understand. That, for instance, every human being has a unique kind of electrical signal, electrical kind of signature, and so each one is unique, and that you can track them from satellites or from overhead airplanes or some other kind of things, and so exactly where everybody or anybody is. Once you know who they are, then you can start to aggregate with that. All the information is generated out of social media and out of the commercial transactions and all the metadata, as they talk about the thing, the secondary and tertiary implications of things. If you buy one of these, the story about them being able to tell a woman is pregnant before she even knows she's pregnant, because the way that she starts to change her buying habits and stuff. They got all of that kind of stuff. They've got the ability to control your automobile. Literally anybody right now, any recently, in the last 15 years or 20 years, the cars all are run by computers, and so they can literally take control of the car and drive it into a tree. That's what they want to do, or they can fence it and say you can't drive your car more than 3 blocks or a quarter of a mile away from your house. They've got the ability to change, and as we all know about your DNA, and to be able to do all kinds of biological kinds of things. It's now clear that every one of us has got these nanobots in our bloodstream, and they're throughout our body. they've come variously from either chemtrails or from stuff in the water or in the soil or in the air or in the electromagnetic stuff. But anyway, so they can now literally read your mind, and they can see what you're thinking of from a distance, and it's bi-directional, so they can put thoughts in your head. And this is a byproduct of the original work that many people would be familiar with, called MK Ultra, which the CIA did back in the 70s and 60s and maybe even the 50s, to where they learned how the brain worked and how they could manipulate it and how they could fragment it, and so that they could control one part and get people to do things that they would never understand, they have no memory of. And but anyway, this stuff is all. And then you get AI that just amplifies and accelerates the way that this can all work. And what you literally are going down that path, you're at a place where there are only two things left that they don't control yet, and that is your money and your identification. That is to say, your digital identification, because and there are programs that are in place, central bank digital currencies, which are an attempt to eliminate all of the currencies as we understand it, the dollars and so on, and replace them with digital currencies. By the way, that's why they're trying to start World War III, because that's the logic, that they need an event and to say, oh, we've got to redo the currency because the World War III. They use that top, and typically they've changed the currency in Germany 4 or 5 times since World War I, and it's all around some kind of crisis or something like that. And so you've got so if they can do that, if they can get rid of all of the paper money and things and make it digital, they can track it. And if they can get you to have a digital ID to where you have, they know exactly who you are because you have and this is the real ID thing that comes in what, 3 weeks or a month or something like that, where you can't get on an airplane in the United States unless you have what they call a real ID, and that's all tied to your biometrics for your eyes or your iris scans or your thumbprint or some other kind of thing. So they know exactly who you are. Okay, so if they get those two things, and within 2 years, it's almost certain, if everything continues the way it's going, which I hope it isn't going to do, but if it continues the way it's going, then they've locked the whole system down. And now they got you. They got your money. They know what you think. They know how you behave. They certainly know where you live. If they don't like what you're doing, what you're thinking, what your ideas are, something like that, they can shut off your money. You can't buy food, or they can say you can't move outside of so many blocks from your house, whatever it turns out to be. I mean, it becomes very science fiction like, very Matrix movie like, almost, kind of thing.
Wow. It sure does.
So, yeah. And so this is in my business, I would argue that the Matrix was the early warning. It was the sign. It put the ideas in there so people can kind of understand the possibility. Because at the end of that path, at the end of that technocratic path, is a complete control. That is to say that Eric Schmidt, who used to be the CEO of Google back then, he about 8 years ago, I think it was now, or 7 maybe, he said that 85% of all the jobs that exist right now will be obsolete within 10 years. And he was looking at the advent of AI and what it was going to do to eliminate. I mean, Microsoft has eliminated like 70% of their programmers because they don't need them anymore because AI can do the programming. And so what you've got is that kind of stuff that's fundamentally changing the nature of work and behavior and social systems and so on. Now, the problem with that is that if you went a straight line down there without considering the kind of the woo-woo aspects of all of this, what you'd say is, God, there's a place down there where you're going to have a whole lot of old people and they got nothing to do because there's no jobs, because they're and by the way, one of the tracks is life extension, so that maybe you're commonly live 120 or 150 years. Oh well, I mean, if you go down that space, everything fundamentally changes. And you say, so what do humans do? Well, there are reasons to believe, and this is not just made up kind of storyline stuff, but it's like it moves itself into metaphysics, because what happens is that there are many sources who play in this space, who say the human soul, the human essence, is consciousness is hugely powerful and has a great amount of energy. And that is as a matter of fact, that there are all kinds of attempts going on in this other dimensional space to kind of parasites to kind of jump on and grab that energy and kind of feed off of that energy. Well, that's the Matrix movie. Remember all these guys being canisters with all the gook all over them and plugged in the top of their head, because they just sit there and suck that energy and use it out. Now, I don't know that it turns out like that, but that's the basic idea, is that there's a place downstream where they don't need you for anything, because they got robots, they got AI, they got all of this kind of stuff. And so humans, as we know, and so you've got guys like Ray Kurzweil, who's one of the directors of engineering at Google, who's saying, the computers will take over in about 15 years, and you're going to work for the computers. And that's then, now you're in an extension of the scenario about living in a simulation. And there are guys like our friend Robert Grant, Greg Braden, and to say nothing about Elon Musk and others, who have all come to the conclusion that this is probably, we're in the middle of some kind of a video game, an extraordinarily complex and very sophisticated video game. Okay, so that's one track. And that's going out this way. There's another track that's going out this way, and it's about, if you want the bumper sticker, it's about freedom.
I love this one. Okay, this is the one I've been waiting for.
You've been waiting for.
I'm waiting for this one.
You got to know both sides.
I mean, got to know both sides.
It's important. All right. And the freedom one essentially says that everything that they promise over on the technocracy side, that you're going to be able plugged into the cloud in your brain, Ray Kurzweil says by 2032 or something like that, that we'll all have, our brains there'll be nanobots all over in our brains, and they're connected to the cloud. And so we're part of a hive mind, if you will, almost. And that's really a good idea, because you can access all that information whenever you need it. Well, as it turns out, over on this other side, this evolution of humanity, this breakthrough to the higher, kind of the next stage of the development of our species, is the ability to do all that stuff that's on the technology side, but it's all inside of us, and it's all capable. We're all capable. And essentially the process in the next, half a dozen years or something like that, is to access and break open and be able to activate all of those kind of capabilities. That's this new human. And it's really rather exciting, because what it essentially says is that we can do anything that they're pitching on the other side, and we can do more of it, and we can do it better, because we can, for instance, connect in very powerful ways to our intuition, to the all that is, and be able to instantaneously get answers. I mean, I'm surrounded by friends who do muscle testing and kinesiology. Well, what is that? I mean, it's kind of a variation of the same idea that says that there are ways that we can access this. And then, a whole lot of other kind of things that are associated with that. It's essentially the path on the right, the technocratic path, technocracy path, is all about external kind of things, doing it to you, providing it for you. On this other path, this path of kind of freedom and development and new human, it's all about finding within yourself all of these extraordinary kind of capabilities that exist, and allowing us to, like I say, jump up to populate literally. I mean, I don't think everybody's going to make it. Nobody that thinks about this stuff thinks everybody's going to make it. They think that there's a critical mass, though, of folks who are going to get together, and that they are going to be able to kind of become the seed capital, if you will, become the basis for this new world. And that if, and I want to talk about that here in a minute too, but they become the basis for this new world, and that then it's, expands, and you've got a, the Bible. There's all kinds of these ancient texts and indigenous people who all talk about 1,000 years of peace and other kind of things. Well, that's what we're on the edge of. We're on the edge of this transition into a space where you get a mind shift, you get a mind change, in the terms of Willis Harman, who used to run the Institute of Noetic Sciences. He wrote a book called Global Mind Change.
Okay, I want to talk about this global mind change, and you mentioned that we're going to come back to the seed populace, but I want to say something. Like, when you said that there are two bumper stickers, we have one that's control and we have one that's freedom.
Right.
I'm going to say right now, I don't want to have to hoard cash. I don't want to go back to driving a 1970s or 80s car so they can't control me. I don't want to wear a tinfoil hat. I really and truly believe, or I wouldn't be doing this channel, that we are on the precipice of the collective waking up. And I have been on this bandwagon for a very long time, saying that wake up. We need to realize the power of what we are. We're now talking about telepathy tapes. This is the 4-minute mile of consciousness. This is where people realize this isn't just fluff, and it exists maybe, or it exists only with people who've had near-death experiences, but there's evidential information that people are having telepathic communications right now on Earth in human bodies. So there's that. And the other part of this is that there is a tipping point that was studied, I believe, out of Stanford University. And I think it's a 20%, where 20% of the population, you probably know this more than I, believe in a belief, and it flips everybody else. And so that's why
it's smaller than that. It's closer to 5%.
Tell me what you know about that, because I studied it a long time ago. I talked about it many, many moons ago in a video, but I know that there's an aspect to that with truth. So what do you know about it?
Well, the idea came from some, if I remember right, an English counter, somebody years ago, a couple centuries, 3 or 4 centuries ago, who studied this and figured out that in a time of war, if and everybody tries to do this when they do wars, is they try to depreciate the currency or the economy, or there's something on the other side. And he figured it out that all you needed was about if I remember right, 2.7% of the people on the other side to have a serious question about the credibility or the legitimacy of their currency, and the whole system will come down. Now, the TM guys, the transcendental meditation people, they figured out that I can't remember whether it was 7 or 10% or something like that, but it's relatively small, that you don't need. If you had a whole bunch of people meditating on you getting the crime rate down in Washington.
They've actually done that. They've actually statistically proved that affects it. Yes.
25 different times. But again, the number, what I'm just trying to say, it's the numbers under
smaller
10
than 20%.
It's under 10%. It's smaller than that. And there are people who say 144,000 and so whatever it is, but in any case, it's quite doable, and we're on the verge of being able to do that, I think, and particularly, with the kind of acceleration that that the internet generates and the ability to kind of cross communicate in this space.
That's why I think people like Greg Braden, who I know you're friends with, Robert Edward Grant, who we both are connected to, and channels like this where we're bringing information to the collective so that they can start to change maybe some of these perceptions that they've had and start to understand what's coming. And then you talked about seeding the populace. So
Right.
explain what you mean by that, because I think this is going to be really important.
Well, it really kind of is based upon this notion that you've got about 2 years before they lock down the system, and you have no options. And this is not hyperbole. This is not hand waving kind of stuff. The programs are in place. I just told you about real ID that they're implementing, and you can't get on a domestic airplane in the United States in a month without having one. And so this is happening, and you can see within about 2 years at the most that if nothing else intervenes, that they kind of got you. And so my position is this: it's like if you went to a party, right? And it is really crummy party. It is not much fun. What do? You leave, right? Isn't that what you do?
Of course.
I mean, if it isn't your mother-in-law throwing the party or something like this, I mean,
Right.
and you leave. I mean, if you're for some strange reason camped on the railroad tracks because you like the view or some other thing, and you wake up in the morning and there's a locomotive coming down and it's blowing its whistle, and what do? You get out of the way, leave. You leave, you get gone. Well, we're not in a. This isn't. You're not going to try to fight the locomotive, right? You're not going to try to convince the host to change their party and get some different people in the room so that it's a lot more fun.
You're not going to shut the hurricane down either.
Yeah, right. You go off and do your own thing. And that's what humanity literally is at the place right now. We're at a place of decision. We got 2 years at the most, I would argue, that if we don't take the off-ramp, if we don't go and start to build the basis for a new world, literally, how it works, how the pieces are, what is it based on, what are the values, and this other kinds of stuff, that they're gonna get us and they're gonna lock us down and we won't be able to go. And so we have this extraordinary opportunity. This is an amazing time that we can literally head off and we can start to creatively think. And what we're trying to do at the Arlington Institute is build up a global conversation, a very curated, focused, managed conversation from nodes, groups, chapters all over the world that are all trying to build the essence of what our new world would look like. And our friend Robert Grant has got the new platform that is the basis that we can do
Orion, right? Orion platform.
Yeah, the Orion platform. And it's got, end-to-end post-quantum encryption and going to ultimately be on the blockchain so that nobody can get to it. And and so, when Robert was
can't
with
be
us,
shut off, in other words, right?
Yeah,
Can't be controlled the way other things can be.
Yeah. And Robert was here. We have a program here at the Arlington Institute called Transition Talks, where we have a speaker every month that comes in. And Robert was our last speaker. And I was taking him to the airport and I was describing this to him. And he says, I've got the thing that's already capable to do all of this. His Orion program.
And I'll ask him. He's actually, I'm interviewing him next Tuesday. Today is Friday. So in a few days, and I'm going to have him talk about this. So thank you.
Well, you tell him that I'm trying to get a hold of him, because the guy's hard to get a hold of. So
okay, I will.
I mean, he knows I'm trying to get a hold of him. He told me to get a hold of him, but anyway. So, but what he wanted This is important. He says, I'm looking for an AI that I can plug into this, because if you've got the platform for collaboration and you can have an AI function in it that is compatible. Well, I'm working on that. We at the Arlington Institute are digitized. We've got about 30,000 digitized books that we're teaching. We're working with Mike Adams, who is commonly known as the health ranger, who's put $1 million into his developing an AI, a large language model that will be focused on our world, metaphysics and alternative energy and alternative healthcare and other kind of things. And so it understands that spec. And my Arlington Institute has contributed a good bit to that. And what we have is the potential of marrying those two things together, the Orion platform and the AI is called Enoch. And so Enoch and Orion put them together. And what you have then is the tool set. And it's going to be available in weeks, right? Weeks. This is not a long time. You will have the tool set to be able to fuel or enable the development of this new track into this new world. The point here being is that you cannot get into either of these tracks without using this technology. If you don't embrace the technology in an appropriate kind of way, and you're interested in this freedom side of this thing, if you're not using technology, you're just falling farther and farther behind, because this other side is just going at warp speed. And they control the media, they control all the money, they control the governments, they control the science, they control all of that kind of stuff. And so what you have to do is that you have to use it. We have to capture, we have to use the AI, and we have to use these tools to go build this kind of conversation around a new model. And it's going to be a really exciting and interesting kind of new piece of technology that's going to be able to show you, and you can turn it and dive down in it and look at it and see how the basic structure of this new world is kind of evolving. And then if you've got a large, maybe millions of people around the world who are all contributing to this, then you've got an in-place kind of base you've got these people who already understand, and they're contributing, and they know the values, and they know the kind of the objectives and where you're trying to go in this new world. And then they adapt it to their own cultures. And so you start to get a big change. And that's what we're trying to do. And that's what really quite important fundamentally, I think. And that's what we're trying to do at the Arlington Institute right now, is to try to facilitate this transition to this new world, and do that by building this way of many people talking together in a very organized kind of way, systematically, about education and government and whatever other kind of things, but all informed by a new set of values that says what do you believe, and what are your goals, and what do you want, and so that you can literally come back to where we were before. You could start a new country that was built around these new things, and that could be an example, a model for what could happen after this.
So it's interesting to me from our conversations that I remember in Egypt. I think the alarm bell part of this for me is that you couldn't just, nobody's in a silo, they're all connected, but you can't just do this just anywhere. You have to have a formula of certain things, because what we're talking about is essentially being off the grid, which means you have to be in a certain climate. Like, I live in Arizona. I have water in my pool, but I don't have great soil. What would I be able to grow here without massive amounts of water in a temperate climate? Like, how would I be able to live here and feed myself? Probably not unless I've bunkered a bunch of food right somewhere.
Yeah, very good. There are a number of things that, in terms of preparation and being able to deal with the kind of change, the basic notion of change is that there are the system that we're in right now is very complex, It's very closely coupled. It's very interdependent. And what that means is that if you get big kind of uh, forces that, that hit this thing and cause damage, what happens is that the supply chains that supply all of the aspects of how we live, whether it's food or water or other things, or automobiles or tractors or what, I don't know, whatever your thing is, that then starts to degrade, and it starts to degrade rather quickly, and then the system doesn't work. Then it's really, if you think your food comes from the supermarket, then you're in trouble. And particularly, you're in trouble if you live in New York City, right? Or Philly, or, I don't know, Denver, maybe even. There is.
Tell me why. Is it because they're big cities? There's a lot of people, and there's going to be a lot of uprising that would be a problem?
Well, because if food doesn't show up, or if the lights aren't on, or whatever the things are, if the system doesn't work, if all the supply chains are not have a high degree of integrity, then whoa, then the kind of the support system for life starts to fray, and it comes apart. And there's a lot of examples of what people do when that kind of things happen, and that is to say, they start doing things that are non-social. They're not, they would never have done before, because they don't have any food. They got to feed their kids and so on. And so what you've got to do, there's some principles about this, and we're doing this. I live in a little town in West Virginia, resort town called Berkeley Springs, West Virginia, and we're 100 miles from Washington, Baltimore, and we're out in the Appalachian Mountains. So we're not there, but we're here. And we, a bunch of us, have decided that we're going to get prepared for all of this. And so there are a number of aspects. So one of them is communications. If all of the communications goes down, then you can't talk to anybody. Well,
we're talking like ham radios.
Well, ham radio is at one level, but everybody isn't going to get a ham radio license. And so there's a program that the government has called GMRS, General Mobile Radio System. And it's a handheld radio. I've got one on my desk over here. And it's with just an antenna on the end of it, and you hold it in your hand. And anybody can have it.
Kind of like the way the old CBs worked, more like that.
It's very much like CB or family radio, or there's a variety of kind of things in here. But in any case, it's got about a 15-mile range and so on. What we've done is we've built an organization here that not only is built on ham radio so that we can provide alternative communications outside of the area if there's a problem, but we've got almost 200 radios that we're giving to families in our county, so that a large number of the families in the county have a radio and they can talk to each other. And we've got repeaters on towers, and we're doing networks that meet every week so that people can practice and then we can work on it. So you need communication. You need food. I mean, one of the things we're doing is we've got community gardens. I got down here on our farm, we've got 12 different families that are all working together in a big, beautiful garden so that we have food security. We're working on a root cellar that'll keep it fresh over the winter time. You need a variety of other things, but I'll tell you what it comes down to, and kind of the linchpin of the whole thing is community. And what you've got to have, and you can't do this by yourself. You can't go into a space where nothing works and try to tough it out by yourself, because if there's no electricity, there's no gasoline, because all the pumps, or if the internet goes down for some kind of reason, nobody can do any money anymore, and you can't pump gas or anything. I mean, this stuff just cascades across the whole system. rather rapidly. And so what you've got to do is have some degree of independence, which is why the problem in a big city, because it's just impossible with the concentration of people and the lack of space to really become independent. But you can do that in the country, and so we've got a whole lot of people who are moving into our area because we're actively trying to get ready for this. But the community part is not just having neighbors that you like. It's about having an organized kind of process where you start to systematically think and say who brings what to the table, and it's a social problem because you have to build trusting bridges. You have to build trusting relationships with people because when things don't work, you got to know who you can trust and so on, and who will be able to be there and do what they said that they're going to do. So what we're doing is we have one program. It's called the preparedness program, and we have once a month we have training for the community, and so we've got 100 or more people, different families that come together every month, and we're going to do one here in another week or so that's all about first aid and stop the bleeding and shock, and then we're going to do another one the next month about home securing, and we got it all planned out for a month, for a year, about how we do these things. We do one in the Saturday afternoon, and we do the same thing on some evening, so that regardless of people's schedule, they can attend. And and we're building a relationship with the businesses in town and getting them to contribute and be part of this. We've actively built a relationship with the county commission so that they support what we're doing. And you've just, to my way of thinking, you have got to start to build, as I say, in our sense, a little kind of alternative kind of way of living that anticipates all of this. We've built relationships with the sheriff and all the county commissioners and the mayor of the town and all this kind of stuff, and they know who we are and what we're doing, and that gives you kind of cohesion. You get a degree of kind of confidence, hope, and social cohesion, and that's just really required here. And if you can't do that, then it really gets tough and it really gets hard. We produced, for instance, a big map that has the county and shows where all the water sources, the spring sources are all over, where the meeting points in case there's some kind of disaster, where you can find people who can help you, and a whole list of things to prepare and what do you do, and frequencies and numbers and other kind of things, and how you contact people, and you just. It's not rocket science, but it does require, some work and some getting out in front of it. And that's what we're trying to do.
Looks like I'm moving to West Virginia, John.
We would love to have you here. We've had 15, maybe 20 people in the last 3 years that have moved here from different places.
Yeah, I know you have. I remember that conversation. Well, I hope that this is actually not put the fear into people, and it's actually giving them some hope about there is a way. I mean, it sounds like this is coming from everything I'm hearing and looking at, but I'm also hoping that there's more of a spiritual part of this, that maybe there's a dimension that you can go into that doesn't include this. I don't know.
Well, of course there is. But Lori, this is nothing but rising to the occasion and becoming somebody new in all ways. And the only reason that we focus on the kind of tangible stuff in this conversation, at least, is because if you can't eat, you're not pursuing a whole lot of spiritual kind of things or other, higher level Maslow hierarchy.
Got to meet the basics.
Yeah.
Got to meet the basics. Well, I would imagine people who are watching are very curious now, want to know more about what you've created, where they can find you, how they can get more information. So will you tell everybody how they can find you?
Sure. The Arlington Institute is arlingtoninstitute.org. And you can find all of our programs there. And we have this marvelous series of speakers. Greg Braden will be with us. Robert Grant was with us last month. We've got David Martin here tomorrow. As a matter of fact, we do these on Saturdays. Greg Braden will be with us the next month. I think the next month is Penny Kelly. Anyway, we've got a marvelous lineup, and we not only hold it and host it here, but we also live stream them around the world. And so you can participate anywhere you want. We got a newsletter called Future Edition that's free that you can get. There's a whole bunch of things, and you can find it there. If you're interested in what we're doing in terms of the community, our organization is called the Morgan County Emergency Communications Network. That's mcecn.org. And if you go there, that's our website. And you can see some of the activities we're doing to kind of provide, like I say, not only communications, but these other kind of programs to supply all different needs for the whole community.
Hey, excellent. I'll put everything in the show notes so people can connect. John, I want to tell you how much I appreciate you, how much I appreciate what you're trying to do. You are trying to make a very concerted effort to connect the collective. And that is just really needed right now. So I'm just grateful that we got to have this conversation.
Thank you, Lori. It's always fun to be with you.
And thank you everybody for watching. It's been about 5 days since I recorded this interview, and I just wanted to share some thoughts. I want to say that I really truly believe that John's message is about promoting community. It isn't meant to be fear-based, and I hope that this isn't sending anybody into a fear-based state of mind, because that's not the intention. Actually, I had several conversations about this interview after I did it with people that are in my life in the spiritual community that I go to when I want to have one of these deeper conversations. And over, we all said the same thing. This isn't about fear. It's about love and waking up the collective. And we all believe that if our vibration is high enough, that we are protected. So I want you to remember that. And then the other thing is that I have realized that I may not be as prepared as I should be in the event that anything happens. I really don't keep a lot of things. I'm not a things person. I probably could last for maybe a week or two with some staples that I have on hand. And I think I might make some adjustments to that. But I'm not talking about going crazy, stockpiling anything. I'm just talking about having a few more things on hand in the event that I couldn't leave my house for an undisclosed amount of time. I think that changes are only constant. Things are going to change. And there are also lots of things that come in and out of the collective consciousness that can cause fear. If you've been on this planet long enough, you remember things like Y2K, where all the computers were going to shut down. You remember the Mayan calendar was going to end, and who knew what was going to happen? And nothing happened. So one of the things that was kind of cool after this was I was having a spiritual conversation with Jeremiah Pospisil. You may remember he had 3 near-death experiences, and I've interviewed him twice on this channel. If you haven't seen his NDE experience, I encourage you to check it out. But in any case, while we were talking about this topic, a Jeep passed me that had a license plate that said, "Not now." So that's my message to you. Not now. Do not let yourself go into a place of fear, and do not take yourself out of the present moment. If I had anything to change, it was driving around and realizing that the present moment is the only thing we have. Noticing the beautiful blooming flowers in the trees, noticing the state of being that I feel so good and so alive in. It's really the only thing we have. So I want you to remember that you are a powerful soul. You can create anything in this life that you want, but make sure that you are staying present. And that's really it. So thank you so much for watching. Next up, check out this playlist of other NDE interviews. Please like and subscribe. It really helps this channel to grow so I can bring you more content. Thank you for watching. I'm so glad you're here.